You could just blame it on me. It's simple. John did it. He made it up.
It's John.
I laughed.
He's filthy. I had to look up. And by the way, honey, don't do that. I gotta tell you right now, honestly, for the purposes of us not starting out in the toilet, I just gotta cut this all out. I mean, I just said to you guys, hey, and folks can just wonder what it was. Hey, welcome back to another episode of 1980s Now, a weekly examination of the importance of 1980s pop culture and its influence today. Hey, my name is Will, and joining me today as they always do, I don't know, are my friends and co-hosts Kat and John. Hey, guys.
Hi, guys.
Hi there. How's it going?
Good. Very good.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
All right.
Hey, on today's show, speaking of the 1980s and its continued influence today, on today's show, we're going to examine the origins of our collective fear of Halloween sadism. It darkened our All Hallows Eves every year, I think, throughout the 1980s, certainly, or in the 70s. And I got to warn you guys, just up front, we're going to talk about some real stuff. Some of it's dark. And gross. But you can't really talk about Halloween sadism without talking about these certain things. Anyway, before that, though, we're going to review current news stories related to 1980s media, including Andy Summers will be watching Sting.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
The Moonlighting strangers are now streaming strangers.
It's the streaming Moonlight.
Moonlight is,
yes. The Moonlight is streaming.
Dee Snider's epic battle with the PMRC has been immortalized in a new graphic novel. And this is a bonus story here, it's only bonus for you because nobody else knows.
Listen. Okay, just the last time we had a bonus story, it went off the rails, so just careful.
I am not pressing any buttons.
Okay.
Bonus story for at least for Kat and John, but not for you listening because you didn't even know I had not intended to include us, or I didn't tell them about it. A new documentary sheds light on a 40-year-old crime. There you go. Okay. Time codes are in the show notes if you'd like to skip around. Hey, briefly, I wanted to tell you guys something. Deja vu. Sorry, Michael. Deja vu. Author Michael Thomas Perrone's follow-up to his award-winning Danger Peak is now available. So Danger Peak, you recall we talked to the author Michael Perrone a few months ago. This guy's just cranking books out.
Yeah.
Very prolific guy. I'm looking around for my copy. It's on a shelf back there.
You could learn a thing or two, Will.
Yeah. Well, hey. And look, we talked about Sky's book last week, which is not, her new book is not set in the 1980s, but the one that we talked about prior was. And Michael's this week is his new book and his last book were both set in the 1980s. And just as a matter of maybe putting out there in the universe, I love both these guys in their work. But you're right, John. To the extent that I'm trying to have it come back to me, this energy of completing works of fiction.
You put it out in the world, it returns. That's nice.
Book karma.
So briefly about Michael's book,
karma.
Here's an abridged summary, one that I abridged. A 12-year-old Bobby Dalton doesn't want to grow up. All his life, he's relied on imaginary games of childhood with his best friends, Joe and Max, to get him through the tough times. Now, so far, I'm thinking this could almost be, if we change the names, it could be the tagline for Gen X Grown Up, which is John's other podcast. Let's just change names here. All his life, John has relied on imaginary games of childhood with his best friends, Mo and George, to get him through the tough times. Yeah, look, that works.
You got it. Yeah.
I love it.
Back to the book, though. It says, but all this changes when his 7th grade class buries a time capsule to commemorate the end of the 1980s. Now Bobby is seeing visions, doubles of himself, his friends, and others. Are these visions real, or has his imagination finally gone away from him? Bobby needs to figure this all out to survive childhood and his life.
Wow.
Deja Vu is a darkly funny coming-of-age dramedy with a sci-fi twist. I'm in. He told me about this book. I don't think I published this as part of our interview because he was working on it. But as soon as he told me about it, I was like, yes, I want to read that, please, immediately.
I love that word, dramedy.
Anyway, I ordered my copy already, and I'm going to be checking it out, reading it very soon. And I encourage you to go to bookshop.org and order your copy today or tomorrow. All right, hey, let's get started because I'm anxious to tell you about this. Talk about Halloween sadism.
Yes. This should be a delight.
I'm so psyched.
But first, we got to get through this news. Hey, as reported by Ultimate Classic Rock, rather. Not just Classic Rock. There's a website, I'm sure, that's Classic Rock. This is Ultimate. Right. They came out later.
Well, far above.
Yes.
Certainly.
Now, next week, we do have a story from Superior Classic Rock. Superb. It's superb, but not as superb as Superb Classic Rock's news coverage of a story we're going to do in November.
Right. I get all my sources are from Penultimate Classic Rock.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, John, I was going to say penultimate. You took it right out of my mouth.
Right. I don't want to brag and do the very best one, just, the next of
That's true. You're right. But they're reporting that Andy Summers is still battling Sting. Of course, Andy Summers being another member of the Police. The rock band that put Sting on the map. Summers has a disagreement with Sting regarding songwriting credits for the Police's hit "Every Breath You Take" is still, quote, very much alive, end quote. I didn't know they were fighting.
I didn't know either. This is kind of fascinating.
I maybe only heard that initially there was some discussion over who got credit, but I thought that beef was squashed. I had no idea.
Now, remember we talked about Sting fighting with P. Diddy, Puff Daddy, with regard to Every Breath You Take, and still getting paid as a result of him, Puff Daddy, sampling Every Breath You Take or interpolating it without his permission. But no, I didn't know about this. But the guitarist is in the midst of an ongoing multimedia tour called The Cracked Lens and The Missing String. While promoting the shows on the Jeremy White Show podcast, Summers was asked about songwriting credits for the chart-topping 1983 single, and he offered a pointed response. Here it is.
Oh.
That song was going in the trash until I played on it, and that's all there is to it.
Wow.
And I think that's composition, absolutely. So I guess it seems like ultimately the battle is going to be over who created the song. I'm sure Sting wrote the song. Andy Summers worked his magic as far as arranging it, and as a result thinks he deserves some songwriting credit.
I don't necessarily disagree with Andy. However, I always am a bit dubious when anyone prefaces a statement with, "I don't care what anyone says," or ends a statement with, "and that's all there is to it."
Don't look any further
You're clearly
into it.
not open to discussion.
No.
You've already made your mind up. So but there's always more to it. And you should care what anyone says. Otherwise, your mind is closed. Anyway.
And that's it. And don't check.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, that's the fact. Don't verify.
Yeah, well, why are you going on your phone? No, put your phone down. Put your phone down. I have to be somewhere. Bye.
I said that's all there is to it. Did you hear me?
This reminds me, we talked, a week or so ago we talked about it many times, how Nile Rodgers improved probably many Duran Duran songs, but certainly the Reflex, if you hear the original version, it's fine. But Nile Rodgers sprinkled some secret sauce on it that elevated it to the Reflex version, possibly the only Reflex you've ever heard.
Very possibly.
Right.
Yes.
But he probably didn't get a songwriting credit for producing it. Instead, he got paid for being a producer. Now, whatever that arrangement is, I guess it could be based on some amount of sales or something, but probably maybe it's a combination of a fee in that. But so it sounds like that's what Summers is, that sounds analogous to what Summers did.
Yeah.
Summers wouldn't go into any detail about the ongoing efforts to get songwriting credit, but he hinted that a potential legal battle is brewing. He said, quote, "Watch the press. Let's see what happens in the next year," end quote. Huh.
It sounds ominous.
Okay. Well, just start now. Yeah, why are we waiting? Just do it now.
That's the Billy Mitchell school of taking action. Just threatening some ominous activity that will be forthcoming. Just watch and be careful.
I'm wondering, when did he start fighting this? Was it when the song became like the most played song ever? Was it way before that, or was it, I'd better try to get more out of this super popular song?
Yeah, it's a good question.
Why do you think it matters, Kat?
Well, I think I'm looking at the money part of it. Was he okay with his part in it before there was potential?
A small part
money?
of zero versus 100% of a hit or 50% of a hit.
I get that.
Well, it's a Police song, right? Doesn't he get money from it anyway?
Well, since he doesn't get credit, I would think that it is a Sting song. Yeah.
It was from the Police. Well, the reason I asked, Kat, is because I could see how maybe you didn't really care when it wasn't a whole bunch of money, but you choose your battles. Like, why would you fight Sting over scraps, but you might fight Sting over, gold? You know what I'm saying? So you might just go, yeah, fine, if you feel happy taking credit. But now, since there's a substantial amount of money with, was the most played song on the radio ever or something, right?
Like
I get why you would
most streamed or
you'd want to get your props there, even if it's just for legacy. Who made that song popular? Well, was it Sting or was it me? So that's the problem of being in a group, is no one person did it. No. So we get that maybe it would be thrown away, but someone had to hand you the thing that was worthy of being thrown away. So you didn't do all of it, right? So
yes, sort of. And I get all that, except I guess that as far as the publishing goes, there's for the most part just two types of people, I guess, that you say get paid for a song. It's the person who wrote it, the songwriter, and then there's money that's paid to the folks who created the particular instance of the song. So, the record company, the studio that actually recorded it, pressed the money up, pressed the record, they get a cut of it too. Other than that, there's no room for if you're an arranger or something like that, unless you cut some special deal. No, too bad. On this record, I just checked, Sting is the only credited songwriter.
Even though it's the Police.
Yeah, but it's the Police performing it. But, in that sense, it's no different than if Sting wrote it and hired a band to record it.
Okay.
But Sting began to work on the song in 1982 following his breakup with his first wife and the subsequent beginning of his relationship with her friend, Trudy Styler, to whom he's married now. The Police intended to include the song on their album Synchronicity, but it proved to be the most difficult to complete. Sting's initial concept didn't have a guitar part, and his bandmates further disagreed on, quote, where the drums and bass were going to sit with the song, end quote. As a result, they weren't going to include the song on the album until, according to Summers, the band didn't have enough tracks to fill it out. Summers said, quote, we needed the material. Sting just turned to me and said, well, go in there and make it your own. And I went in and I got that lick almost. Oh. It was in one take. Everyone stood up and cheered.
Well, if that were me, certainly I'd want some credit, right?
Well, we clapped. You want money too?
Yeah. Settle down. But and as Kat teased, it was in 1983. It was number one in the UK and America, and it spent 8 weeks on the top on the Billboard Hot 100, and it was the best-selling single of 1983, and it also earned them a pair of Grammys, and finally is regarded as the most played song in radio history.
Right.
Hey, another 1980s news: Moonlighting is now streaming. As reported by Consequence, as of October 10th, all 5 seasons of the show are available to stream for the first time ever on Hulu. We talked about this, I don't know, months ago, maybe a year ago. It might have been around a year ago because I think it was the creator of the show teased, she's on the brink of working something out, but all 67 episodes of the comedy, I'd say dramedy actually, right? I think dramedy applies to this too.
I think so.
Starred Sybil Shepherd and Bruce Willis have been remastered in HD from the original film source and will feature the Grammy-nominated theme sung by Al Jarreau. I was a fan of the show. Did you guys watch? I don't remember. I'm sure we talked about it.
I have seen it.
Yeah.
And I wasn't in a situation to be able to just like religiously watch it.
Because your dad was controlling the TV.
Exactly. But I definitely enjoyed it. And while I'm excited that this is now an option, I'm like, darn, I have so much else to watch too. But I do really want to.
Yeah, I was surprised you told us you were watching Poltergeist.
Poltergeist? Oh my gosh. I've actually seen that so many times, but when I was very young, my sister was obsessed with it, and it was on, I guess, HBO, and it was always on. And I thought, it's been a really long time. And after we talked about the skeletons, they're here. I thought, I'm going to watch this again. I got to look at these skeletons.
Did it hold up? Was it scary?
Oh, yeah. I mean, well, it wasn't like, Scott was doing little
scare you?
You're calling him out here on the show? He's a chicken. I was fine.
No, he was jump scaring her, trying to scare her.
Oh,
he was trying to scare
you. Oh, I thought you was jumping.
He's waiting. You see him waiting. He's like, I know something's coming.
Well, you're calling him out. You're calling out his meanness and shenanigans.
Yes, right,
calling out.
So it wasn't like it was super scary, but it's a really good movie. I really enjoyed watching it again. And I kept having these moments of, I remembered that. Like the lady, the clairvoyant lady.
Zelda Rubinstein.
Whose
house is clear.
Oh my gosh. Yes. I'd forgotten all about her, and whoosh, there she was. So that was a cool experience to have all these memories.
My wife is still terrified of snow on a TV static.
Oh, really?
Seriously. And that happens, and I start going, Mommy, can you hear me? Are you there? Oh, she runs out. No. She's like, nope.
Does she push the TV out on the patio?
Yeah, and how many TVs we've gone through?
Well, speaking of Moonlighting.
Is that what it was? Okay.
At one point we were, sure.
I thought this was a story about Poltergeist.
I don't know if I ever watched a full episode. I've always seen it on a lot, but I never watched it long enough to be engaged in the show. So I was actually surprised when I saw Bruce Willis in Die Hard. I'm like, who's this guy? Like, I didn't have the baggage of Moonlighting that he had to break through to be this action hero because he was this, this humorous leading man guy. So, but now that it's on Hulu, the fact that that's a big deal, it shines a very important light on the fact that we are at the mercy of streamers to see what we want to see.
Yeah.
And if you don't own it somehow, either digitally or on DVD or whatever, or Blu-ray, I guess, even DVD isn't HD, so you wouldn't have it, but at least you could watch it.
Yeah.
But now, like I get newsletters or in my feeds, like everything leaving Netflix this month.
Yeah,
just so you go and watch it before it's gone. That was never a thing.
Yeah.
You watched what you had, or you went to the movie store, and the movie store wasn't throwing away movies, right? Everything was available forever once it came out. But now that we are all suckling on the teat of streaming now, when we don't get physical media, we're at the mercy of what they have a license for or what we're subscribed to. So effectively, Moonlighting has been unavailable to anyone that didn't have the discs for years now until now, which is crazy.
And even worse, John, and I'm sure you guys know this, anything you bought from Apple, quote unquote, bought, or from any of those services like that, you didn't actually buy the movie. You bought a license to watch it when you watch it. And I've had movies that I bought disappear from my library to approach Apple.
They don't have it any longer.
Yeah, and Apple's like, well, we don't have a license for that one anymore. I'm like, well, I do, as far as I know.
Right.
We were only subletting a license to you, and now we've lost it. Yep.
And then they wind up refunding your money for it, but that's not the point. I want to always have it available forever, like John said. Anyway. The original show aired from 85 to 89. Of course, it's centered on Shepard's Maddie Hayes, who was a fashion model who goes broke after her accountant absconds with all of her money. It turns out the only asset I think she has is this detective agency that's being run by Bruce Willis's character, David Addison, and he talks her into, because this is what he does, he's very smooth. He talks her into keeping it open and instead, running it together to solve crimes, and that's what the premise of the show is. Of course, the show, quote unquote, jumped the shark when these will they or won't they couple eventually willed they. And I was like, oh, it's fine. But the sexual tension just goes out the window. If you're actually 100% sexual, then there's no tension.
Exactly.
That's why I never have sex with my wife, because I just like the tension.
You like the tension.
No, honey. I have a headache. Tension. I have a tension headache, and I like it.
Will we or won't we? The tension is palpable.
Yeah. We can never, because then we're going to jump the shark like Maddie and David.
Please do the dishes.
Yes, also. And also. Hey, another 1980s news, as reported by Comic On, or Comic. I think this website is taking advantage of this phrase that's just part of our regular vernacular now. Comic On.
The dish tension. Suddenly, I'm thinking
dish tension.
Dishwashing tension.
That's where I was going.
Wash the dishes because I'm enjoying.
Yeah.
Will she or won't she wash the dishes? The tension is palpable.
I don't know what you guys are talking about. I don't know how it became about washing dishes. Something to do with your households and the arrangements you have with your spouses.
You were in such a rush to talk about comic books.
Like you do errands for... I heard what you said. I just kept going because I don't know what you're talking about. I think you guys have a chart in your house where like a certain amount of errands earn you certain things.
It's a value. I'm taking the trash out tonight.
Aha! I feel,
or not.
Honey, look, I got 5 holes in my punches in my card now.
You know what that is? Free sub.
She's like, all right, let's get it out of the way with, because if he makes it to that 6th punch, I am not willing to go there. Can I move on now? Your wife will be grateful. So this is reported by this website, it's comicon.com. I mean, it does seem like it's taking advantage of Comic-Con, right? But that wouldn't be Comic-Con. It's like Comic On.
Maybe it's Com-Icon.
Oh, there you go. Com-Icon. Reported by Com-Icon. Dee Snider's battle with the PMRC has been documented in a graphic novel that's coming out this November. And I'm all excited about this.
Neat. Yeah, that sounds great.
So when Twisted Sister's lead singer Dee Snider walked into the U.S. Senate's Committee on Commerce in 1985, he was wearing a jean jacket and a tank top, looking every bit the rocker that you saw on MTV. But he transformed in this moment from, this just what folks thought was just solely this rock star who was trying to push the edge, who some folks suggested maybe he was a Satanist, and all the evil that was associated with that. But instead, he became this rather unlikely advocate for free speech. during this era where all types of music were coming under attack because this organization, was scared of it and scared of it on behalf of our children. And if you watch the video of him speaking, and it's available, you can find it, no problem. He is he surprises all these folks who think that they're just going to, these folks on this committee, that they're just going to take advantage of this guy who's probably unsophisticated musician.
Probably not so bright.
But he's clearly well prepared, well spoken, and does speak,
articulate.
He's articulate, yes, and makes a well-reasoned argument for not censoring music. Anyway, and this PMRC was led by Tipper Gore, Al Gore's spouse. And she and this organization were intent on silencing Twisted Sister and many more just like it. We've talked, Kat asked last week if any of the songs we were talking about were part of the Filthy 15. The PMRC is this group that put together this list of 15 songs that represented everything that was wrong with America in music.
Such great music.
And unsurprisingly, a lot of it was sexual innuendo. Some of it was violence, but a lot of it, I think most of it, was sexual innuendo. And they couldn't handle that. And our kids couldn't handle it, which is always mystifying to me because between sex and violence, most people are going to have sex eventually or have some sort of sexual something with themselves, with a partner.
Right.
Most people can go their whole lives and avoid violence. That is not a natural, I don't know. So why do we want
why make it an issue?
Anyway, this is the music group that, lobbied to have stickers, explicit lyrics stickers put on different records, which backfired on them because now kids knew what records to shop for by looking for these parental advisory labels.
Well, wasn't Tipper Gore suggesting like kind of what we have on television now with the ratings? It would not only be a rating, but it would be like, what is it? Right? What is the problem? Television could be, TV 13, MA or whatever, and it can say V for violence or N for nudity or whatever. And she wanted to have like codes, which would be even more helpful to kids to know, I want to definitely get this one because they're talking about sex or they're talking about the occult or whatever, They know now, but you're
a little index.
Right. Yeah. Who was the band? Was it Public Enemy or somebody that just made their album cover the parental advisory sticker?
I think was it them? NWA maybe?
NWA. Might have NWA. Okay. Yeah, I think you're right. Yep. Let's just say, let's embrace it and just thumb our nose and our entire cover is your sticker. So there you go.
So now in partnership with Z2 Comics, Snyder's War to Preserve the First Amendment is detailed in He's Not Gonna Take It, a graphic novel charting the rockers' battle against censorship and free speech. Alongside writer Frank Marafino and artist Steve Kurth. But more than a story of those hearings, we are told, He's Not Going to Take It charts the life of Dee Snider from a childhood where he was frequently silenced through early efforts to stifle his band's music to the open warfare of the PMRC hearings in Washington, D.C., and his current efforts on social media. Regarding this, Dee Snider said, quote, "When I look back on that historic day, I think, how did I fit balls that big into those skin-tight jeans? Then I reflect on the fact that I still stand for everything I stood for all those years ago, and I'm ready to do battle again."
And his jeans are looser now, so he really can let it hang.
He's also older, so I guess gravity doesn't help. So
swing low.
Yes. John is just singing a random song.
Sweet Dee Snider.
He's Not Going to Take It will be available in both softcover and hardcover formats, as well as an oversized hardcover deluxe and an oversized hardcover deluxe hand-signed edition. You could order all of those from the Z2 Comics website.
Can you get foot signed also? You have options.
Get your foot signed?
Hand signed, foot signed.
Oh, hand signed.
That's right.
Oh, yeah, you're right. That is a weird way to say
that. You say hand signed versus just signed.
What's the other way?
Foot signed, right. Mouth signed, hold the pen in your mouth.
I want to try to distinguish from those. They have that like machine that it's like it's called a mechanical pen or something like that, where it just reproduces your signature using an actual strokes. You put a pen in it and it actually just does it. That's what they're trying. It's not a fake.
Maybe that's what they mean.
It's not a.
I like John's idea better though.
because so many people want Dee Snider's autograph that we couldn't possibly have him do them all, so we had to build it. No, they're hand signed.
And
use both hands.
And
ambidextrous.
Dee Snider says, obviously he says this in his quote and this little bio or the summary as to what this graphic novel is about. Yeah, we're still fighting these stupid issues still.
Yeah.
We should not be.
And more so in some cases. Yes. More so.
Look at the state of Florida. Just whole batches they're dumping books or pulling books from library.
We're not so bright down here.
Crazy.
It drives me nuts. can we just be done? I mean, seriously, can we just be done with the shit that we fought about years ago that all of us collectively said, our generation said, this is nonsense. We don't like this. Now our generation's like, I'm all for this. Now I'm old and I want to do this thing that I didn't like as a kid. Don't you see? You're part of the cycle.
The hypocrisy. Yeah.
All right, whatever. Anyway, finally, as reported by CBS News, a new documentary sheds light on a 40-year-old crime. A groundbreaking new documentary investigates the chaos of one of the nation's most notorious crimes, Painkiller, the Tylenol murders, premiered on Paramount Plus on October 10th.
Did it?
Using hours of exclusive archival footage, the 5-part docuseries transports viewers back 4 decades to the moments after a twisted killer laced Tylenol pills with cyanide and killed 7 people in the Chicago area. Fear and panic shot across the country with no one knowing how widespread the poisonings were.
Right. I remember that.
While the person responsible was never arrested, the journalists behind the film believe they know who did it.
Really?
Yeah. They also explore the missteps by law enforcement in the investigation of the prime suspect and the real possibility that had he been caught sooner for previous crimes, the murders in Chicago would never have happened.
Oh, wow.
It took 2 years to make this documentary. It features in-depth present-day interviews with the few remaining witnesses that played pivotal roles in ultimately solving this, determining what was killing these folks.
I've got to go. I'm going to go start watching this right now. I love documentaries like that. And this is, that's, and more so, I mean, obviously, the deaths, which there were, it was all over the United States, but really it only affected, was it like a half a dozen people or so? Did you say? It wasn't that many people?
7
died,
people,
right?
yeah. 7.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it feels bigger. But the impact that it had on on the pharmaceutical companies and, on packaging and that kind of thing. I find that really fascinating. I don't mean to diminish the people who were the victims of it, of course, but I'm equally interested in how we all reacted to it and how companies reacted. I think that's going to be fascinating. So, and with 5 parts, they should have time to dig into all that. That sounds great.
Yes, and they do. Hey, and more on that a little bit later in the show. Speaking of that, let's say that was the end of 1980s news. All right, so hey, like I mentioned at the top of the show, surprising both of you because you had no idea what we were talking about because I didn't I realized I didn't put the topic in our website there. That
right, we're well prepared.
We share our notes, but hey, like
open-minded.
Yes, and although this isn't going to be a true crime, I'm going to tell you about some true crimes, minus the normal bells and whistles and silly voice. Although I do want to play some creepy music in the background because I think that might help set the mood, especially since it's Halloween season. And what we're going to be talking about is the fear of the Halloween sadist that I want to say followed us through most of our youths and is still present today. Maybe not to the extent it was during our when we grew up, but I still hear talk about this to this day. And what are we talking about? All right, well, let's just talk about it here. Let me play some creepy music though first. Let's see if I can get this going.
Of course, it's a must. Set the mood.
I love Halloween, by the way. I love it. Something about this time of year. I mean, it's just perfect. Obviously, Halloween has become what it is because of what was happening naturally. Yeah. So the fact that things in nature, plants are dying,
rotting,
the days are getting shorter, the nights are coming sooner. All that plays into the spooky, eerie aspects of this holiday.
The darkness is taking over.
Yeah.
Amazing moons with clouds sweeping behind the front, and the branches are losing the leaves.
Zombies wandering the streets.
That's obvious. Yep.
Well, that's part of the cool thing about Halloween, right? I mean, there is something really cool about being outside and just all these freaks. Not in the sense that Houdini you're talking about, but all these freaks in the sense that Houdini's song was culturally appropriated for Halloween parties in elementary schools. Just wandering, in costumes. It's pretty cool. It's like a safe purge.
It is cool.
I guess, maybe.
A safe purge. Yeah. Okay, I like it. That's apropos.
So much of what I'm going to tell you about, share today, comes from the work of Joel Best and Gerald T. Horiuchi, I'm going to say. Who published a paper in 1985 called The Razor Blade in the Apple. Now, since then, Best has continued to update some of their findings over the years, but I relied mostly on just the paper as it was published then. because that most clearly reflected what we thought, how we thought and felt at that time. We were growing up in the 1980s. So, and that's what we're going to be talking about. We're talking about Halloween sadism. We're talking about this idea that there are people out there that want to harm children, particularly on Halloween night, by tainting in one way or another their Halloween treats, making them dangerous.
Right.
And although fears of Halloween candy can be tracked back to the 19th century, it turns out, when mass-produced candy found its way onto store shelves, which seems to me, right? You could think that this is just like a big Halloween candy thing, right?
Right.
Right. Buy the packaged candy. It's safer.
Yeah.
Don't go with the fruit and stuff because that's dangerous, right? It's big candy stretching their arms into everything.
That's got to be it. The origins of this. And whether that was true in the 19th century during the 1800s or not. Two tragic stories from the 1970s helped fuel the fear that gripped us one night each year throughout our youths. So, sure, it began a long time ago, but it was kind of low level. And then during the 1970s, it grew.
Yeah.
1970, as reported by the New York Times, at the time, a 5-year-old Kevin Toston, one of those, who had eaten Halloween candy laced with heroin, died in November of that year. The authorities at Children's Hospital ordered an autopsy on the victim, who fell into a coma after eating the candy.
Wow.
He collected the candy during his trick-or-treat rounds. Doctors said that the boy had suffered an overdose of narcotics. Analysis of some of the candy he had eaten showed that heroin mixed with quinine in powder form had been sprinkled over it.
Wow.
And then in 1974, after trick-or-treating, Timothy O'Brien asked to eat some of his candy before bed. He selected one of the pixie sticks he had collected. When he had trouble pouring the powder into his mouth, his father rolled the straw between his palms to loosen it. And after consuming the candy, Timothy complained that it tasted bitter. His father gave him some Kool-Aid to wash the taste out. Timothy began vomiting almost immediately, and within minutes, he was convulsing.
Oh my God.
His father called an ambulance, but Timothy died en route to the hospital less than an hour after consuming the pixie stick.
But a pixie stick, those are sealed, right?
Yeah, those tubes with powder.
Yeah, paper tube. Yeah.
But they're just are they sealed? They used to just be folded over, I think. So.
Oh.
Still, yeah, pretty easy
maybe
to
they
tamper.
were originally. Yeah. Oh man. Eventually, I knew that they would be sealed, but wow, maybe it was folded at first. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Oh.
So I mentioned that these, fear of consuming treats that were homegrown, goes back to even the 19th century. In a more contemporary period, we had some news reports of these folks reporting kids being sick, injured, hurt from treats. News reports in the 1950s. But even that said, as I mentioned, they didn't really tick up till after these things started happening in the 1970s. During that time, the press began reporting more and more incidents warning parents to inspect Halloween treats.
I especially remember that hospitals would volunteer, bring your treats by, and we'll give you a free X-ray of your entire hall, right?
Yep.
I never did it, but I remember that it was advertised that, stop by your local, community hospital and they'll give you this free candy X-ray if you want. And they'll,
Oh my God.
That's right.
Yeah.
You didn't do it just for fun?
Just
my candy X-ray.
Just to make him give me an X-ray? No, I did not.
And he stuck his arm in there because he had injured it earlier. Can I hold the candy while you run the X-ray? Tries to get free medical attention.
There appears to be a bone in your apple. Because I'm holding it with my
and
hand.
it's fractured. They wrap a cast around the apple and your arm.
That's going to be nice in 4 months when I take that cast off.
So here's some examples. In the New York Times in 1970, they wrote, quote, "That plump red apple that Junior gets from a kindly old woman down the block may have a razor blade hidden inside it."
Oh my gosh.
In 1975, Newsweek warned, if this year's Halloween follows form, a few children will return home with something more than an upset tummy. In recent years, several children have died and hundreds have narrowly escaped injury from razor blades, sewing needles, and shards of glass purposely put into their goodies.
I remember hearing about sewing needles too. Yeah.
Tell me if I'm going to wreck your whole thing here. But,
And I'll cut it and I'll cut this out.
But right. To my knowledge, the razor blade thing never actually happened. There was no recorded incident of it happening. That's what I remember hearing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're wrecking my whole
Yeah, okay, I'll stop.
Oh, no.
That's why I prefaced it with that.
You're ruining Kat's fun.
I remember the warnings. I remember the check your candy or don't accept things that aren't wrapped, like by factory wrapped.
Yep.
And then at some point I learned, I don't remember how old, that my grandmother would make these popcorn balls. Mm-hmm. She'd make her own treat and wrap them up.
Saran wrap.
Yeah. And she'd hand them out. And I was horrified.
Yeah.
Because you saw what she was putting in there, razor blades. Forget what John said.
No, actually, they did a lot of sewing right there.
She was like, X-rate this, you little brats.
I remember turning that corner, Kat, where, because my mother, she would like, oh, let's make brownies, let's make this or whatever. And it came to the point where she's like, well, I want to make brownies for the trick-or-treaters, but I know they'll throw them away. Oh. Because if it wasn't a sealed product, it was traditional that people would thank you very much, but the kids weren't allowed to have it because, who knows what could be in it because of all this hysteria.
Yeah.
So we caved into big candy again and started buying whatever Brock's had that year.
Kat's like, Grandma, will you sew this sock? I have a hole in it. And she's like, I'm sorry, I'm all out of sewing needles this year. They're all gone. I have to get more at the store.
Pass Granny one of those Granny Smiths.
Mm-hmm. At the time, Halloween sadism was thought to involve random, vicious, unprovoked attacks against small children. Mm-hmm. The attacks seemed irrational, and the attackers routinely described as disturbed or insane. In an October 1970 New York Times article, psychiatrist Dr. Edith Jurica posited that, quote, people who have this much hostility towards children must have had a really deprived childhood. And psychiatrist Dr. Reginald Steen told the paper that, quote, they are probably frustrated and filled with resentment against the world in general. Quote,
and imagine how angry you have to be to give away your heroin. Oh! I mean, if you have some because you like it, you got to be really upset with kids to sprinkle it on candy and just give it away, right?
You're like, this kid's going to be so ungrateful for this heroin. He doesn't realize. I guess unless you wanted to get unless you're a dealer and you want to get him addicted, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
First one's free.
Man.
Cut a hole in a sheet and take my whole stash.
Mm-hmm. What?
Ooh. The ghost. The ghost.
Okay. You just cut one hole though, John, so you had me concerned when you were putting through it. Why is there just one hole? You said cut a hole.
Nothing goes through it but sight.
Okay.
Oh.
Yes, John is a Cyclops. As a result, various authorities responded to the threat. Legislatures in California and New Jersey passed laws against Halloween sadism. Do you need a law saying don't poison kids and put razor blades in apples?
I don't
know.
We'd like to make this official. Yes. Y'all stop messing with the kids' candy. It's just not nice.
Damn it.
Because up until then you go, show me the law where it says I'm not allowed to, right? And then I go, okay, we'll make one.
Honey, do you have the receipt for these razor blades? Go bring them all back.
The razor blade tension is palpable.
Again, I think you took away the wrong message, what I was trying to say. Maybe I wasn't clear. Schools train children to inspect their treats for signs of tampering, and some communities tried to ban trick-or-treating altogether.
Wow.
Parents, too, of course, heeded the warnings. Many restricted their children's trick-or-treating, examined their treats, or arranged parties or other indoor celebrations. I imagine this is when trunk or treats were born in church parking lots and schools.
It could be. Yeah. Although I don't remember hearing that phrase trunk or treat until like in the 2000s.
Yeah, me too.
I think I heard it earlier, but it's possible.
It was the beginning of like the demise of the traditional Halloween when it wasn't just feral kids running the street, pulling pranks and getting candy. Now you're going to be chaperoned around to houses of people we know, and we're going to, it's all the policing of Halloween turned it into not the safe purge that you said it was. Will, it's just we've lost that. I just think we still don't have it back.
Here where I live, it's 6 to 8 o'clock on the Friday closest to Halloween, before Halloween. Right. It's very regimented. And I gotta say though, it's kind of fun because of that, because the neighbors are all out and it's kind of like a, like a little party atmosphere, and it's off a school night, that can stress some people out. But I was amazed by it. When I first moved here, I was like, wait, what? Like trick-or-treat's not on Halloween? I was so confused. And it's not all
crap.
day?
That's crap.
It was a little
right.
weird.
You don't legislate Halloween. Halloween is a gift to kids. Do you remember how much fun it was to go out and run wild? And if it was it's a school night. Well, it's one school night. It's not going to kill you. Go have fun. So
John, I didn't run wild though. There was none of that.
Well,
for
you
me.
missed out.
So John, you were sort of getting to this. You were skeptical of this in the same way that these two researchers that I mentioned were, because in 1985 in this paper they set out to determine whether or not these threats that had been reported were true or not. Now there's no reliable official statistics on Halloween sadism, it turns out. So instead, Best and Horiuchi examined the coverage of Halloween sadism in 4 daily newspapers between 1959 and 1984. Now there were some limitations. They conceded that whereas the New York Times, for example, proved to be unusually complete in their coverage of these types of stories, the published indexes of the Chicago Tribune, which they also relied upon, and the Los Angeles Times were less thorough. They also examined all Halloween stories in the files of the Fresno Bee. But by looking at the stories in these 4 newspapers, they felt comfortable they had a national coverage for different stories, because many of these papers reported stories that happened in other states.
Okay.
And they note that while there were some limitations, they believe this approach was strong because, in the very least, it was bolstered by the fact that there's a strong business interest in newspapers reporting titillating stories that would involve Halloween sadism. He sells newspapers. So if it happened and they knew about it, one of these papers would have reported it.
Yeah.
All right. So let's take a break here from our scary music for a moment, because once again it's time to play.
In Philadelphia, it's worth $50.
So I mentioned to you from 1959 through 1984, these two researchers examined all of the newspaper stories. All the reporting were related to Halloween sadism, stories where children were injured by someone purposefully, again, tainting their Halloween treats.
Okay.
Closest without going over. How many stories were reported between 1959 and 1984?
Oh, okay.
I will tell you that the incidents included stories from 15 states and 2 Canadian provinces.
How severe must the incident be? Must it be something was found to be potentially dangerous, or something actually happened to a child?
It's as the bar is as low as something happened.
Okay, all right, that's fine. That's fair enough. Yeah,
so it doesn't involve necessarily injury, death.
Yeah.
Something happened,
Gotcha.
or something was attempted.
Okay, I have a guess.
Okay.
I have a guess.
Okay.
I'm going to say I believe and always have that it's largely based on hysteria, that someone told someone it could happen and it got blown out of proportion.
Yeah.
But in every legend has a kernel of truth, so I don't believe it's 0.
Right.
I'm going to say 3.
Very good. Kat?
Well, over 25 years, I feel like it needs to be a bit more than
Okay.
3.
Yeah.
I'm going to say 15.
Okay. I guess closest without going over, the winner is Kat. Because 16 could be the answer. But it turns out, and you both were onto the right track as far as undercounting what you would suspect a number would be to reflect, again, like John's saying, the hysteria, the mania with regard to this fear.
Yeah.
It was actually 76 reported incidents during that time period.
Wow.
However, none were serious.
Okay.
Injuries were reported in only 20 cases, and only 2 of these involved deaths.
There's my 3.
You were close to the death tally there. Oh,
Right
man.
there. I was so close.
Yeah. And I should point out that while there were few stories with regard to strangers purposely, attempting to harm children, these newspapers did report on other Halloween tragedies, including accidents, accidental deaths and murders that took place on the holiday. Because that happens all the time. It turns out the biggest killer of children on Halloween are cars, not noticing children crossing the street, or drunk drivers that are coming home from a Halloween party, that sort of thing.
Right.
Anyway, back to the scary music. Now, nearly half of the 76 incidents that I told you about occurred during the 3 years from 1969 to 1971. And the wave of reports coincides with the perceived rise of this Halloween sadism as a serious threat. So again, even though folks had conceived that this might be a problem, for decades earlier, now it's becoming a reality. Fueled by stories that, like I told you at the beginning of this.
Okay.
So while the media routinely offered mundane safety tips, they warned us about flammable costumes, masks that obscured the view. And most of those, what was that company, Ruby's masks? They cut into your eyeballs. I mean, you had to cut them open a little bit wider so the rubber band was too tight. And
Yep.
You had the Ben Cooper and Collegeville. They had the mask and smock thing, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
But from 1972 and on,
pulled your hair.
So beginning in 1972 forward, the advice included urging parents to inspect their children's treats for tampering. And while reports of Halloween sadism peaked in 1971, with 14 of the 76 occurring that year alone, reported incidents dropped off precipitously to a few every year. That is until 1982.
Uh-oh.
What happened in 1982? September 29th, 1982, just a month before Halloween, Adam Janis, a 27-year-old postal worker from Arlington Heights, Illinois, died of what appeared to be a massive heart attack.
Oh.
Upon learning this devastating news, Adam's brother and sister-in-law, Stanley and Teresa, rushed to his home to console the other family members that were there. And while visiting, Stanley, who had back issues, took an extra-strength Tylenol capsule from the bottle in Adam's home. Teresa, his wife, who may not have been feeling well dealing with the sudden tragedy, followed suit and took 2 capsules as well. Shortly thereafter, Charles Kramer, an Arlington Heights Fire Department lieutenant, was called to that home in an emergency. And when he arrived, he found Stanley on the floor with paramedics hovering over him.
Wow.
Teresa, who was hysterical as she watched her newlywed husband fight for his life, steadied herself by grabbing the fireman's arm. But soon, she groaned and also collapsed to the floor next to her partner. Stanley died that day, and Teresa died 2 days later. When Kramer asked nurse Helen Jensen, the Arlington Heights' only public health official to investigate the medical mystery, she spoke with family members, and she learned that the victims had each taken Tylenol that day. Wasting no time, she went over to the household and searched and found the Tylenol bottle with 6 pills missing, which started to confirm her suspicions that obviously this was probably the culprit. She even took it upon herself to play detective and searched their garbage and found the receipt showing that bottle was purchased that day.
Wow. Okay.
But when she presented this evidence to the police and the medical examiner that evening, they didn't believe her hypothesis. Jensen told the Painkiller documentarians, the Paramount Plus documentary I just told you about, quote, "They laughed at me. They're not going to listen to me. I'm a nurse, a woman." But when 12-year-old Mary Kellerman from Elk Grove Village also died earlier that morning, and they learned she had also taken an extra-strength Tylenol that her parents had given to her to help deal with a cold, the connection was undeniable. And over the next few days, 3 more died suddenly after taking the over-the-counter medication. Finally, following Jensen's lead, the Tylenol taken by these unfortunate victims was found to contain 3 times the lethal dose of cyanide.
Oh my God.
Isn't it? It's almost, I don't want to say understandable, but it's almost, you can see why someone might not be quick to judge this trusted over-the-counter medication. Because it wasn't at that point suspected something had been tampered with. But if she was calling attention, hey, they both took a Tylenol, you can go, well, Tylenol's not a big deal. Don't worry, that can't be the problem.
Sure.
Because certainly no one knew they had been, had been tainted. But as you said, once there was a connection outside of that one home, and you're like, well, this is tough to ignore, and that's when it all blew open.
To their credit, Johnson & Johnson, who manufactures Tylenol, took immediate action. They recalled more than 31 million bottles that were still in circulation.
I remember that. Yep.
They quickly established that the cyanide lacing occurred after cases of Tylenol left the factory.
Right.
Someone, the police hypothesized, must have taken bottles off the shelves of local grocers and drugstores, laced the capsules with the poison, and then returned the restored packages to the shelves to be purchased by the unknowing victims. Now, if you recall, these types of pills were the kind you could just pull the two halves apart and gain access to the medication.
And just a powder inside.
Yes.
Right.
One man named James Lewis, claiming to be the Tylenol killer, wrote a ransom letter to Johnson & Johnson demanding $1 million in exchange for stopping the poisonings.
Oh, boy.
And after a lengthy cat and mouse game, the police arrested Lewis in New York. Upon his arrest, Lewis told authorities how a person hypothetically behind the attacks may have carried out the killings by buying the Tylenol, adding cyanide to the bottles, and returning to the store shelves. He even included details like, well, they would have a certain kind of pegboard where they could use to drill into the thing, and very detailed. Yeah.
Huh.
He was also found to have previously possessed a poisoning book. And according to a confidential law enforcement document, his fingerprints were discovered on pages related to cyanide. In spite of this, however, Lewis was never linked directly to the Chicago area murders. But he was charged with extortion and sentenced to 20 years in prison.
Good for him.
He was released after only 13 years in 1995. And while a handful of other suspects were in play, investigators always came back to Lewis, who steadfastly maintained his innocence. Court documents released in early 2009, however, show that, quote, Department of Justice investigators concluded Lewis was responsible for the poisonings, despite the fact they may not have had enough evidence to charge him. End quote. As a side note, Lewis was found dead in his Massachusetts home this past July. He died of natural causes at age 71. Now, of course, these murders led to a number of changes to medicine. Johnson & Johnson introduced tamper-proof packaging and a new caplet, which was a tablet coated with a easy-to-swallow sort of covering that also made it essentially tamper-proof.
Like sealed it closed, right.
And in 1989, the FDA established federal guidelines for manufacturers to make all such products tamper-proof.
I think it's worth calling that out, especially for any younger listeners who might not remember pre-82.
Right.
That was everything that you see now, you know, the paper seal that says if this has been tampered, do not, return to the store, and the shrink wrap around bottles and things like that. That was nothing. Yeah. You could open a bottle just like it was yours. You already owned it. There was nothing to stop you from opening it and rummaging your finger around and going, yep, that's pills, and putting it back on the shelf. All of that came out of this incident that, as you said, it wasn't just for Tylenol and Johnson & Johnson. Everyone did that because no one wants that to happen to them in the future. If it does, they've done everything they can to stop it or prevent it.
It's interesting that it suggests that I guess our society at that point was naive to the possibility of these types of dangers. I mean, it seems like a no-brainer that you'd protect medicine in some way.
Well, but who would do that, right? You have to wonder what kind of, it takes a special kind of lunatic to believe, let me randomly poison people who I've never seen just because why?
Yeah.
So it's because it's a crime with, what's the motive? What would be the motive of tampering with this thing that goes to someone you'll never know other than getting in the news or something, it was unimaginable until now it was, unavoidably imaginable. No.
And if it was for a specific victim, it's astonishingly ineffective, right?
Right. Right. Yeah.
It's a special.
There are much more efficient ways to poison people. I'm sure. I don't know. I'm assuming there are more efficient ways.
So you're not admitting to a crime or a potential crime?
Uh-oh.
No. Do not get Phil Collins after me at a concert. Okay. No, do not.
Your cues. So in the weeks that followed this Tylenol scare, there were hundreds of reports of copycats adulterating food, over-the-counter medications, and other household products. And as Halloween approached, because this happened in September of 1982. So just a month later, we were celebrating this holiday. But as it approached, the media repeatedly warned parents that trick-or-treaters would be in danger. Some communities discouraged trick-or-treating for Halloween, and American grocery stores reported that candy sales were down more than 20%.
Wow.
In the wake of the scare, the confectionery industry tried to reassure potential customers in a white paper on Halloween candy tampering. The report noted that more than 95% of the 270 potential Halloween 1982 candy adulterations analyzed by the FDA showed no tampering. Although some authorities began to believe, as one FDA official concluded, that the fear was a result of, quote, psychosomatic mass hysteria. And in fact, many, if not most, the reports of Halloween sadism were of questionable authenticity. 2 of the 76 reported incidents were determined to be hoaxes, and the researchers concluded that the others were likely the result of undiscovered fraud.
The problem is you cannot unring that bell for the public, for parents, for the paranoid, and no one wants to be the one who says, oh, it's fine. My kid is not going to be the one that tests the theory, right? You're going to err on the side of caution because the news is telling you that. It's terrible what happened to Halloween.
Yeah. And you can't, these researchers concluded that you can't blame the media entirely because although the media can play a role in manufacturing crime waves by focusing on, a particular type of offense.
Right.
As we talked about with 76 incidents reported over a 25 period, and many of these were 1 or 2 sentence, line items in a newspaper.
Yeah.
They weren't talked about very much. So it wasn't the result of the media, conflagrating. I don't know what the word would be.
Yeah.
This scare.
Is that bursting into flames?
Yeah, exactly.
It.
Imagine you don't have a flameproof.
Conflagration.
It's very incendiary, that's for sure.
Incendiary. Yes. Instead, Best and Horiuchi concluded that the belief that Halloween sadism was a serious threat can be characterized as an urban legend.
Myth busted. Clank.
And they explain, because I honestly don't know I think these folks are sociologists, but I'm not positive. They explain that in general, urban legends are the products of what they describe as social strain. And the form of strain that seems most clearly linked to Halloween sadism, and it was the growing sense that children were no longer safe in the United States. It's 10 p.m. Do you know where your children are?
Right. Yeah.
It was during the 60s and 70s that physicians and social workers promoted child abuse as a major social problem. The popular press responded with dozens of dramatic stories about children who had been cruelly treated by their parents. The rhetoric of this campaign emphasized that all children were potential victims, that child abuse occurred in all sectors of society, and even parents who were certain that their children would never be abused could worry about losing their children to other threats. And during the 70s and 80s, you'll recall that there were emerging campaigns against incest, child pornography, child molesting. We had more than one special episodes of our favorite sitcoms, including Different Strokes, that addressed some of these issues.
Yep.
In turn, contributing to a larger sense of children being in jeopardy during that time period.
Yes.
What's interesting is, while these factors may have contributed to the fear of a Halloween sadist, they actually highlight the actual threat that children faced during the 70s, 80s, and today. That is that a child, or I guess anyone for that matter, is more likely to be hurt by someone they know than a complete stranger.
Yep.
Which brings me back to the 2 stories from the 1970s I shared earlier.
Oh, bazinga. Here we go.
True tales that likely lent credence to a rising fear of Halloween sadists. So you recall that in 1970, a 5-year-old Kevin Toston died of an apparent narcotics overdose. Well, after further investigation, police concluded that the child swallowed a capsule of heroin and not Halloween candy. Inspector Robert Slotky, chief of the Detroit Homicide Bureau, said that the boy had apparently swallowed the drug while visiting an uncle's home. The child had gotten into the uncle's poorly hidden stash of heroin, eaten it, and died. It seems the family had concocted the Halloween candy story to cover for Kevin's uncle.
To cover for Uncle Druggy.
And even more tragically is the story of Timothy O'Brien, who I told you passed away in 1974.
Oh, I'm not going to like this pixie stick story.
Yeah, you're not. As the investigation into Timothy O'Brien's death continued, investigators began to suspect Timothy's father, Ronald, of the heinous murder of his son.
Son of a bitch.
Oh, no.
None of the homes to which O'Brien had taken his son to trick-or-treat that Halloween had given out pixie sticks.
Okay.
Oh, busted.
And he even concocted a story that, well, it's that one home, though, that I think is abandoned. There was somebody in there. I saw his hairy arm come out. He handed the pixie sticks.
Okay.
And the police found that while that house wasn't occupied during Halloween, it's because the gentleman, I think, was an air traffic controller and actually wasn't home till 11 p.m. that night. Anyway, the investigators soon learned that O'Brien, who was over $100,000 in debt, was about to have his car repossessed, had defaulted on several bank loans, and had his home foreclosed on, had also taken out life insurance policies on his children in the months preceding Timothy's death.
Oh, you son of a bitch.
It gets worse. Oh my God.
Various policies, 3. He went to the insurance company 3 times, and by the second and third time, the insurance companies were like, I don't think you should do this or need this.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, these 3 policies totaled approximately $60,000 in 1980s money. They'd be equivalent of over $350,000, I think, today.
Sure.
Police also learned that on the morning after Timothy's death, O'Brien called his insurance company to inquire about collecting the money.
Oh my gosh.
And after learning that O'Brien had visited a chemical supply store in Houston to buy cyanide shortly before Halloween, although he left without purchasing anything, police arrested him. O'Brien, who maintained his innocence, was found guilty and executed on March 31st, 1984.
Not a moment too soon.
Yeah.
During the execution, a crowd of 300 demonstrators gathered outside the prison, with some yelling "trick or treat." And others showering anti-death penalty demonstrators with candy.
Right.
And for his final meal, an apple with a razor blade in it.
Oh. Now, like to John's point about you can't unring this bell, sadly, while the report of these tragedies initially, as I told you them at the beginning of this segment, were front page news, the version of the story that I just told you was, on back page or, C section B or something like that.
Update to this story, it was just another lunatic parent or druggy uncle. Or
was that uncle? Yeah.
Which, unfortunately, wound up obscuring the real threats to children, family members, and instead gave birth to a fictional boogeyman. Anyway, there you go. There's some cheery news for you for Halloween.
And my poor Nana got falsely accused of
by us.
Right. Her popcorn balls were unfairly maligned by vindictive in-debt fathers.
Enjoy my popcorn balls. I'm sure if you do, you'll never have to worry about darning a sock again.
She sounds like the witch in
You look like you
now.
could use a shave. Have a popcorn ball.
What's the connection? I don't get it.
Oh, you will later.
Nana, I really like your glasses, Nana.
Oh, you do?
Oh no!
Come in. Let me show you my collection of popcorn buckets for my popcorn balls. Yes.
Excellent.
Still in the wrapper.
All right, hey, that was our depressing show. Kids, be safe out there. My kids still, when they come home, they look for tampered candy. We probably had this conversation with them. I mean, we probably have said it. We don't. Wait, I don't. I don't want them eating something that somebody baked either. Honestly,
You're not going to be the parent that goes, "Don't check anything. Just eat it in the dark. Don't even look at it." You don't want to be that person. That's the
Candy
problem.
roulette.
The bell is there. It rang, and now you're like, "Well, let's be a little cautious just in case."
Yeah, the cost to double check or be extra safe is small.
That's right. It is.
Little amount of time, and most people don't make home baked goods because they grew up during this era. So we don't even have to toss those out, really.
Yep.
Man, this is making me second guess what I hand out. One thing I get is a big old bag of Dum-Dums.
Yeah.
It's just those little twisty wrappers.
Oh
my gosh.
Right. They need to be sealed in wax hermetically.
Guys, I got to tell you something as a side note. It's really depressing about that Pixie Stick story if I haven't bummed you out enough.
Oh, by all means.
This guy, so John, they were sealed Pixie Sticks. He opened them, poisoned them, and then stapled them closed.
Oh.
Stapled?
Yes.
Ooh.
In fact, he had given out 4 of these Pixie Sticks. So his son had, I think, most of them. And when the investigators realized what it was, they notified other kids that were trick-or-treating with his son.
He gave out others as a smoke screen so it wouldn't be just his son?
Yes.
Oh,
now,
burn in hell twice.
It turns out that only one other boy had one. Mm-hmm. And because he was trick-or-treating with his son. Because what the father did was he let the kids go ahead, and then he pretended he went to a home and said, "Oh, hey, the guy was there. Sorry, he wasn't there a second ago." He gave these
and he put them in the bag himself.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
So one of the kids' friends got one, and when the parents found out, they panicked because they knew he had a Pixie Stick, and they ran up to his bedroom to find him sound asleep, holding the Pixie Stick. He couldn't open it because it had been stapled closed.
Oh my gosh.
Anyway, good night.
And this cheerful episode brought to you by...
Yeah. Which Halloween sadist brought us this episode, Kat?
I'm not sure any of our patrons want to claim to helping us bring this to
they're in there now.
Right. Whose fault is this show, Kat? Read the names.
Yes.
Well, it's those early adopters with their sewing needles, Karen Flieger and Rick
Whoa, Kat, you're taking it too far. Wait, you're suggesting that a criminal helping pay for an episode that's dark is one thing.
That's one thing, right?
And suggesting your grandma tainted her balls. So something else.
And thank you especially to our secret of our success level Patreon supporters like Marcus Taylor, Tony Great, Nick Guillory, Craig Coletta, Matt Marino, John Henderson, and Brandon Greer.
Hey, thank you so much, guys, for supporting the show. We greatly appreciate it. And if you want to join our patrons in helping literally fund the show week to week, please visit us at 1980snow.com/support or go straight to patreon.com/1980snow. Hey, you know what else you could do, or in addition to, make a comment on Facebook, send us an email, will@1980snow.com or cat@1980snow.com. John still doesn't care if you write him or not. This stuff just goes into
I'm not going to read him anyway.
This stuff just goes into a hole.
Meh.
Just do one of those things, or Twitter, or share one of our episodes. And here is some examples of that. Hey, we were just talking about author Sky McDonald, our friend of the show. With regard to our news that Star Wars had removed something from canon, we shall say. Sure. Sky wrote, I was LOLing in my car through the whole episode, but the Star Wars bit, I am deceased. Which I found out the young people say that when they mean like something was really, really funny.
Oh. No,
yes.
I'm glad she's still all right. She's not.
They'll say,
I know. Also, like, oh no. Also, in the "Don't Stand So Close to Me," have you seen the video for Total Eclipse of the Heart? Same vibes, swapped genders.
It's true. Yes, I rewatched and I was like, wow.
With regard to last week's episode where we talked about breaking in the 1980s, we asked folks whether or not they also danced on a piece of cardboard on their neighborhood streets, and we got some responses here. Lucy writes, I've never braked. Then she writes, broken. What's the past tense, I guess? But in very rural New Hampshire, where there was no quote unquote street, we were as impressed by it in music videos as everyone else was. Brett wrote, my only exposure was watching battles at the local roller rink. They had a corner with cardboard, and we would watch them have at it. My cousin could do some smaller moves and try to teach me, but I was more of a nerd. Imagine a breakdancing nerd, he writes.
Oh. I hadn't thought about the crossover. I was real, the crossover between breakdancing and roller skating. I definitely saw that at my roller rink.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I mean, because if you're athletic enough to be able to do those pop and lock and breaking moves and stuff, you probably also are skating backwards and crossing over and doing all the cool stuff and the limbo. I definitely saw people on the skating rink, on the, whatever is the rink floor, whatever. They're actually breaking while they were out there. Yeah. So I didn't even occur to me until I saw that email. So that's awesome.
Host of Mr. Throwback Thursday, Jamie Robinson writes, we used to break all the time in the mid to late 80s. One of the biggest places for us in upstate New York was the rink. There you go.
There you go.
Every Friday and Saturday night at the local roller
me.
rink, they would clear the floor and open it for breakers. Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yep.
And finally, Marcus wrote, got sent to classes at the local YMCA, guessing the reason it didn't stick had to do with everyone involved being white and from Alabama.
I love the part about he got sent to.
Yeah, it was either that or a military academy.
Was he sent to or sentenced to? Was that a typo?
Exactly. Court ordered breaking.
That's right. I sent you to 4 sessions of pop and lock.
Yes. You're hereby ordered to get rhythm.
That'll turn you into an upstanding citizen.
That's what it is. That's what you're lacking.
Okay, hey, folks, we will talk to you next time on 1980s Now.
Until next time.
Trick or treat.